Yes. Okay. Yeah. N. Yes.
So, hi, Aparna.
Yes.
Yeah, now we
Sorry.
have been joined by our HOD, Dr. Vaishali.
Okay.
Yeah, she is there.
Okay. All right. Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Hello. Hello,
Hi,
Aparna.
ma'am. How are you?
How are you? Oh, fine.
You're good? I'm good as
Yes.
well. Thank you very much.
Good. Good. Long time. Long time.
It's been a very, very long time.
Very
So
long time.
that's part of the reason why I was so excited about this, because I'll get to touch base with all of you as well.
Yes. Yes. We are very excited to know your achievements.
Really?
Very
Well,
nice.
well, I think I've always been a bit of an outlier. So it's not traditional physio I've gone into. I think I've gone more into rehab and long-term rehab. So yeah, I'm very proud of everything that I have achieved so far, and let's see where this journey takes me from here.
Oh, that's exciting. That's very exciting.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Because I mean, as you know as well. Sorry, yes, carry on.
Yes, yes. Tell me, Aparna.
No, I was just going to say I truly do believe that physiotherapy has a spot in everybody's life, and how we can make that a reality is to make people realize what we have to offer long term, not just when you're in pain or when you're not able to breathe, because it's all about maintenance, right?
Yes, very true, very true.
Yeah.
Persistence
Yes.
and perseverance is what is important in physiotherapy.
Yes. Exactly.
We should we start?
Shall we start? Yes.
Yes.
Well,
So, to begin
yes.
with, just a general instructions to the participants. So, for your information, the video is being recorded. So, you can post your questions in the chat box. The questions will be taken up for discussion at the end of the session. So, those who are interested can be dressed up comfortably and have a yoga mat to practice Pilates following the instructions of the speaker. So, now over to HOD for the introduction. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Selvam. A very good morning to all the participants. And I welcome Ms. Aparna Shah, who is our alumni in the batch of 1996. She has completed her master's in pediatrics from USA and has certified in Pilates for rehabilitation and to those neurological conditions and adults and children. She is presently affiliated as senior physiotherapist, Pilates instructor, and a balanced body master trainer, educator at the Moving Body Group, a Pilates studio in Singapore, where she is currently residing. Going ahead with her toddler, yes, with your small little one and her husband. Welcome, Aparna, to this global alumni meet, and a very warm welcome to you. And I thank Selvam for organizing such a global meet. And over to you, Selvam
Yeah,
and
thank you,
Aparna.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Aparna will straight away go ahead with the session. Can you please
Okay.
start sharing your screen, please?
Is that good?
Yeah. So you are all set up now. So over to you.
Okay.
Now it's all yours.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And for some of you, it's in the middle of the night. So I'd like to say thank you for joining me. I'm going to give a little presentation. It's an introduction to Pilates, and I actually call it Rehabilitation because Pilates has two parts to it, of course. We've got the fitness element, which a lot of people are aware of, but there's a very, very big rehab element to it, and that's exactly what drew me to Pilates in the first place. And that's what this presentation is going to be about, the role Pilates can play um, in your job, in your profession, and in everyday life as well. We're going to do a short 20-minute presentation, all right, a little bit of theory work. And then from there, we're going to move on to a group class. And I'll conduct this group class. I'll be moving myself, and I would love it if all of you could join me. Because unless you do it, you're not going to be able to experience and feel what these simple movements can do for you. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so Pilates. Pilates was devised by this man whose name was Joseph Pilates. This bunch of exercises is based on his theory of contrology. Contrology is a complete control of body, mind, and spirit. Through contrology, you first purposefully acquire complete control of your own body, and then through proper repetition of its exercises, you gradually and progressively acquire that natural rhythm and coordination associated with all your subconscious activities. You will develop muscular power with corresponding endurance, ability to perform arduous duties, to play strenuous games, to walk, run, travel long distances without undue body fatigue or mental strain. And this by no means is the end. This is what he wrote in his book called Return to Life Through Contrology in 1945. Joseph Pilates was born in 1880 in near Dusseldorf in Germany. In 1912, he traveled to England where he made a living as a boxer and self-defense trainer. When World War I started, he was interned as a prisoner of war at a camp where he rehabilitated disabled and injured soldiers with his exercises. Now, when Pilates was a young boy, he was quite sickly, so he spent a lot of time in and out of his doctor's office, where for some reason he decided to pick up all the anatomy books that he could get his hands on, and he studied and he read. He would move each part as he memorized what that part was supposed to do. And he would lie as a child in the woods near his house, just watching the animals move, which is where his onus on rhythm and flow came from. Because animals move with this agility, and this agility is what helps us to reduce the amount of deleterious forces that can be generated in all our weight-bearing joints. In 1925, he traveled to America to set up his own studio in New York City, which is still operational. 1967, he passed away, and in 1971, Clara, his wife, retired. These are examples of some of the apparatus that we use in Pilates. Although Pilates itself did start off on the mat, during his internment in the World War I camp, he was working out of a hospital. So what he did was that he saw the hospital beds and he saw an opportunity to make all of these apparatus, which would help him to rehabilitate all the war veterans. What you see up here is the mat, of course. The reformer, which was the original hospital bed, springs were taken out, attached in different ways, and came up with the reformer. Then there's a trapeze table, the chair, and the barrel. When he went to the US, the reason why he decided to make this a business, right, is because he truly, truly believed that movement is a gift, and movement is the key to keeping us healthy and live long. He said, if your spine is inflexibly stiff at 30, you are old. If it is completely flexible at 60, you are young. His principles, Joseph Pilates' principles of his exercises were based on these 10 principles: breathing, concentration, control, centering, precision, balanced muscle development, rhythm and flow, whole body movement, and relaxation. Now, what's really interesting about this is if you look at all of this stuff and you think about it, it's a lot of this is what we've learned in our first year and second year of physio school, right? What was interesting about Joseph Pilates was that he came up with all of this stuff without having any formal education. He realized that the breath was important because this is where we get our nutrients to keep going. He realized that concentration was important. Unless you are focused on what you're doing, the exercises that you're doing are not going to have as much of an effect. Control, eccentric control specifically, super important. As you all know, it's the deceleration phase which very often results in injuries. And therefore, controlled movements is a very big part of any Pilates exercise. Centering, working from your core muscles, from your center. Precision, movement with optimal alignment. You will note the use of the word optimal and not ideal because, of course, everybody's alignment and everybody's posture is dependent on the life they lead. Balanced muscle development. Whatever you're doing on the left, do it on the right. Whatever you're doing on the top, do it at the bottom. Because, of course, exercising all our muscles cooperatively and loyally aid in the uniform development of the whole body. Rhythm and flow, the smooth, graceful, and functional movements. Integration, teaching your trunk to stabilize while your arms and legs move, teaching your legs to stabilize while your trunk and arms move. And relaxation. Of course, it's important to sleep, it's important to be zen, it's important to chill. But it's also very important to understand the difference, or the balance rather, between effort and relaxation. There is no reason for us to exert maximal effort in performing our movements. Because, of course, if we exert too much effort, you're not going to really have energy left for anything else. So the balance between effort and relaxation is very important. Now, what do I get from here? My biggest learning from this Pilates journey, which has spanned the last 10 years, is that you need to understand that you need to work with your body and not against it. And it's equally important for our patients to understand that they need to work with what they've been given and not against it. There's so many times I have patients come in and they say, oh, you know what, my back, or my neck, or my knee. And the standard reasoning for all of this is that I have bad posture and that's why my neck hurts. That might be true, but as you all know, posture is a result of your body's interaction with gravity or reaction to gravity. So you have to optimize your body's ability to react to gravity. And that's how we focus on working with the body, working with the muscles, the bones, and the alignments you have, and not try to bend everything out of shape into what the textbooks say is the ideal. So what we saw earlier was Joseph Pilates' principles of Contrology, and those principles were the ones that his exercises, his bunch of Pilates exercises were based on. Now, from the point that Joseph passed on, there are a lot of Pilates schools that have flourished, that have erupted all over the world, and each one of these Pilates schools have come up with their own movement principles that are based on Joseph Pilates's principles of Contrology. So what you see here, these are the principles that I have devised, which I believe will help me. I mean, not believe, they definitely help me working with my patients, especially when I'm rehabilitating them, not just training them for fitness. But I believe that these are the principles that can help any allied health professional work better with their client, with better framework, and to address their treatment programs um, in a more uniform way. All right. So the first principle is to always look at your inner unit and its accessories. Now, when we talk about this principle, the question really is, what is the core? Everybody knows that the core is this canister that we have in our trunk, which is our transverses, the multifidi, our diaphragm, as well as the pelvic floor. So these four things together form the core. But you know what? Our core really isn't just this. This is just the inner unit. And everybody's inner unit is working perfectly fine, because if your inner unit wasn't working fine, you'd be sitting in a hot mess, literally, right? So the inner unit needs to work with the accessories, and these accessories are what we refer to as the outer unit. I'm just going to skip forward for a second, then I'll come back to this slide. This is the outer unit, and it's something that Diane Lee and Andre Fleming have been working on for decades, literally, right? Some of you might be familiar with this. Actually, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. We've got the anterior oblique sling, the posterior oblique sling, your dorsal longitudinal system, and your lateral system. Now, these guys, these bunch of muscles, work together with your inner unit to provide lumbopelvic stability. Now, if you have lumbopelvic stability, you will have precision in movement in your arms as well as in your legs. And that's why it's really important not to forget about these at all. Now, the anterior oblique system is made up of your serratus anterior, your internal obliques, external obliques, and then your adductors. The external obliques and the adductors are your contralateral ones. Your posterior oblique system is your lats on one side, and then your glutes, the contralateral glutes. And this, of course, you have them on both sides, right? Then you've got your dorsal longitudinal system, which is comprised of all the extensors starting at the base of your head, running down on either side of your spine, down into the sacrotuberous ligament, down along your bicep femoris, into your tibialis anterior and your gastrocnemius. Now, what's really interesting about the dorsal longitudinal system is this is the only system or only sling that involves a ligament, which of course makes you wonder about the sacrotuberous ligament and its interaction with your bicep femoris, and what these two, the role these two play in stabilizing your sacroiliac joint and therefore the whole pelvis, irrespective of whether you are pregnant or you have had a stroke or you're rehabilitating from an ACL tear. So that was your dorsal longitudinal system. From there, we move on to your lateral system. So now your lateral system comprises of your gluteus medius and minimus on one side, and then you've got your adductors and quadrilaterus lumborum on the other side. Now, the lateral system is really important. I hope you guys can see me when I stand up. The lateral system is really important because this is the system that helps you to keep your pelvis centered over a single leg. This is the system that prevents this drop in your pelvis. And therefore, this system becomes extremely important, extremely important in any weight-bearing activity, irrespective of whether you're walking or you're running. Now, I know a lot of this stuff is primarily, it's ortho, it's musculoskeletal, but what I found very interesting about all of this is you can see how all of these systems come into play when you're working with an adult or a child who has a neurological disorder, a hemiplegic, a child with cerebral palsy, whatever it may be. And with all the patients that I've worked with, I find the neuro patients that I've worked with, I find that whenever I have worked based on this construct or thinking about these muscles and their connections, their rehab has been a whole lot more efficient. All right, so that was your inner unit and the accessories. From here, we move on to the pelvic girdle and legs. Now, we'll discuss all of this a little bit more when we start moving. So in the pelvic girdle and the legs, you want to consider what is the neutral pelvis. You want to consider hip pelvis dissociation and, of course, the alignment of your lower extremities. From there, we move on to the shoulder girdles and the arms. Now, what's interesting about the shoulder girdle is that it's exactly like the pelvic girdle, and that's why they're both called girdles. You've got your pelvis, sacrum and the ilium, and then up here, you've got your scapula. So it's really interesting how the scapula is basically exactly like your ilium, and they kind of work together as well. You've got the ball and socket joint, which is your hip joint in the lower body. You've got your ball and socket joint in the upper body, which is your shoulder. And so that's why the pelvic girdle and the shoulder girdle, they're two ends, and they actually mirror each other. So very often when we're working with people who have lower back pains, who have SIJ dysfunctions, you've got your pregnant women who've got a pubic symphysis, our focus ends up being just on the pelvic girdle, but you have to remember to look at the shoulder girdle and the arms as well. From there, we then move on to considering spinal mobility, getting the spine to move in all the different planes it is possible, it is capable of moving in. And subsequent to that, you want to think about integrating everything and getting the inner unit and the outer unit to work to stabilize prior to the movements in the pelvic girdle and the leg, shoulder girdle, and the arms spinal mobility. So the really interesting thing about the core, and again, I'm sure all of you know this, the really interesting thing about your core, the inner unit and the outer unit, is they all work through a feed forward mechanism. So the media, fitness gurus, everybody talks about core strengthening. I don't believe it's so much about core strengthening as it is about the ability or your ability as a physiotherapist to train this feed forward mechanism. So your stabilizers understand that they need to switch on in the right ratios for the function that your client is about to perform. So they need to switch on in that right ratio before the movement starts. And that's the key to rehab, I believe, looking at that activation. So as I was saying before, then we have your integration, which is your upper extremity, lower extremity, spine, all working together, and also getting the body to understand how to move in a non-functional environment into a functional environment. Now, a lot of this, the theory part is well and good, but one has to remember the principles of motor control as well, is what I call motor control 101. Yeah? Motor control basically says that we all start off being unconsciously aware of our movements, which means that we don't know what we're doing, and therefore we don't know whether it's right or wrong, optimal or not optimal. Through working with a physiotherapist or somebody who is properly trained, we go from being unconsciously unaware to being consciously unaware, which means that suddenly we know, we realize and we understand what hasn't been done the right way or optimally, and maybe we can now start thinking about what needs to be done. From there, you move on to be consciously aware. Now, consciously aware is where you know exactly what you're not doing right, and you know exactly what to do to correct all of that, and you're able to do all of this consciously. However, we can't walk around and we can't be leading life constantly thinking about how to activate this and how to pull that up while we lift our arms and our legs. So the epitome of motor control, when you know you are safe and you are working as optimally as your body can work, you know you've reached that when you are able to do, when you are unconsciously aware, which means that you are able to move with grace, with rhythm, and with flow without having to consider the different steps that need to be adopted to achieve those graceful movements. And therefore, again, irrespective of whether you are teaching a fitness class or you are working as a physiotherapist, rehabilitating your patient who has a stroke, or rehabilitating a child who's fractured his elbow, or you're rehabilitating an adult with an anterior cruciate ligament tear, one has to remember these steps and work according to these steps, because at the end of the day, people need to be independent of us. They shouldn't be reliant on us to move. Now, I'm saying a lot of stuff and there's no avenue. We don't have an avenue to banter right now. So please, if you do have questions, just put them into the chat box, and I'll get to them later, yeah? Right. So that was our little presentation on Rehabilitates. All right. And the different things one has or one should consider when drawing up a program for the patients. Now, what you see on this slide are the different principles that I had highlighted, the Rehabilitates principles, and the different exercises, or some of these are obviously not all the exercises one has in Pilates, but some exercises in Pilates that can be used to trade each one of the principles. Now, you have to remember that as far as these principles are concerned, you don't necessarily have to go in the order that I had highlighted earlier, but it is best to start by training the inner unit and accessories, and eventually moving on to the integration exercises. All right. So what I've done is, if you guys would like, you're welcome to take a photo of the screen for your own record. And from here, we're just going to move straight into the exercise part of the program. So I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes to set yourself up. All right. I hope everybody can see my yoga mat over here. Let me just move it back a teeny tiny bit more. And let's just get you all to get comfortable. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. So I've got my little list of exercises drawn up over here. And first, what we're going to start off with is our diaphragmatic exercises. Now, as you know, the diaphragm is part of the inner unit. It is the top part of our inner unit. And therefore, you do need to access these guys as well. So our basic diaphragmatic exercise is where you place your hands on your tummy, take a deep breath in, feel your belly expand into your hand, and you're going to breathe out. As you breathe out, try to draw your belly button back in towards your spine. Breathe in and breathe out. We're going to do this one more time. Breathe in and breathe out. So you're pulling the belly button back. Now from here, we move on to lateral breathing. Now lateral breathing is all about working on your bucket handle movement. of the ribs. And therefore, it's about getting into the intercostals. Now, the reason why your lateral breathers are so important is because these guys, training these guys, number one, allow you to get out of your accessory breathers, which is what leads to a lot of tension in the neck and very often can result in tension headaches all the way here and in the base of your skull. The other reason why lateral breathing is so important is because this promotes rib mobility. Now, the ribs are attached to your sternum and they're also attached to your thoracic spine. So lateral breathing mobilizes your costochondrals. They also, your sternocostals, your costochondrals. It mobilizes all of these joints, therefore allowing you to move into an extension and into a flexion, as well as a rotation and side flexion. We'll talk about this a little bit later when we start doing more advanced exercises, but as a rule of thumb, you want to use the inhale, where your ribs expand sideways to allow air in, to facilitate extensions. You want to use the exhale, where your ribs narrow to facilitate your flexion. All right, so let's get everybody to place their hands on their ribs. You can either do this, or if your shoulders feel a little tight today, go ahead and give yourself a hug. You can breathe in. As you breathe in, feel your ribs expand laterally. And as you breathe out, feel your ribs draw away from your hands. Breathe in and out. Let's do 4 more of these. And the exhale is a pursed lip exhale. 2 more. And exhale. And you have 1 more. And exhale. Now from here, we're going to move into fingertip abdominals. Now, this is a really interesting exercise because this is the one that allows you to understand how much is enough. You have to remember that when it comes to activation of your core muscles, you just need 30% of maximal voluntary contraction. Anything more than that is going to go straight into your bigger global muscles. All right. So I'd like everybody to place their index and their middle fingers just on the inside of their ASIS. You're lying down with your feet about sit bone width apart. Breathe into the sides of your ribs. And as you breathe out, feel your fingers sink into your tummy. And you'll eventually get to a point where you feel these little muscles just plump up. You feel those muscles plump up, that means you've gone too far on your activation. That's actually your obliques that are activating, the external oblique specifically. So you have to remember the external oblique acts as a global muscle. The internal oblique, however, acts as a core muscle as well as a global muscle. So you definitely don't want to feel that activation in your external obliques. So let's try that again. And this time as you exhale, I'd like you to let your fingers sink into your tummy only till you feel that little plump start up. And that's when you're going to stop exhaling and contracting. Go ahead, you're going to breathe in and breathe out. And I'm going to stop right about there. When you find that sweet spot, you may actually feel the pelvic floor lift up towards the belly button a little bit. Let's get you all to just do 2 more of those. Try it out yourself. And we're going to do 1 more exhale. And remember that feeling. Remember that activation. That's the kind of feeling that you're looking for throughout these exercises. From here, we're moving into your pelvic clock. Now, pelvic clock is the exercise we use to figure out where your neutral pelvis is. A neutral pelvis is where you don't have too much work going on in the front, the back, or the sides of your trunk. Your pelvis is balanced, allowing equal activation all around. And everybody's neutral pelvis is different. So it's really important for your clients or your patients to understand how to figure out what this neutral pelvis is. So everybody's going to breathe in to prepare. Remember, breathe into the sides of your ribs. As you breathe out, I'd like you all to curl your tailbone or your coccyx up. So what you're doing is you're doing this posterior tilt of the pelvis. That's going to make you feel like you're pushing your lower back down into the floor. As you inhale into the sides of your ribs, feel your tailbone reach down towards the floor. As the tailbone reaches down, you'll feel an arch in your lower back, but you have to remember the back of the ribs still stay on the floor. Exhale, curl the tailbone up. Inhale, back down. We're going to do that one more time. Up and inhale back down. Do that a couple of times yourself. And then I'd like you to come to a stop somewhere halfway through that range. You're neither curled up too much, nor are you arching down too much. That's your neutral pelvis in this plane. All right? Now, from here, we're going to move on to looking at your neutral pelvis in the next plane. All right, in your sagittal plane. I'd like everybody to place their fingers on their ASIS on either side. Now from here, lift your right ASIS up to the ceiling, put it back down. Lift your left ASIS up to the ceiling, put it back down. And I'd like you to keep switching from side to side. Now this really is just a movement in the pelvis, and there's no movement anywhere else at all. Your knees may feel like they want to move, but we're not talking about moving the femurs. You're just moving the pelvis. I'd like everybody to keep moving up and down, and make sure you just keep moving as you swing from side to side. Now, what you'll also feel is when you lift the left ASIS up, you're a little heavier under the right bum. When you lift your right up, you're a little heavier on the left. So move a couple of times more and see if you can figure out where your neutral is in this plane. It's a space where ideally both your ASIs are at the same level. Also, you want to make sure you have equal weight under left and right bum. All right. And from here, we're going into the actual pelvic clock. So I'd like everybody to make this diamond with their hands, and you're going to place the diamond on the front of your pelvis. Your fingers are going to be placed on your pubic bone, and your thumb is going to sit just below your belly button. Okay? Now, the pelvic clock. Imagine you've got a clock sitting on your pelvis. Your belly button is 12 o'clock. Your pubic bone, down where your fingers are, your pubic bone is 6 o'clock. Your left ASIS is 3 o'clock and your right ASIS is 9 o'clock. From here, I'd like everybody to curl their tailbones up to 12. Maintain the 12, roll over to 3. Maintain the 3, roll down to 6. Maintain the 6, roll over to 9. Maintain the 9, back up to 12. And I'd like you all to draw 5 such circles. All right. Now, ideally, this movement should be localized below the pelvis because we're just mobilizing your lumbopelvic region. You shouldn't feel too much of a movement in the upper body. And again, only apply or only use as much effort as is necessary. This isn't a hard movement. These are the movements that your pelvis do when you're walking around. Once you've done 5 in that direction, we're going to reverse the circle. So from here, you're going to roll up to 12, tilt over to 9, down to 6, over to 3, back up to 12, and we're going to do this 4 times more. And 3, 2, and 1. And back in the center. So that was us giving our lumbopelvic region some awareness that, you know what, you are capable of moving and this is how you move. This also kind of wakes up the lower core muscles and teaches them how to engage as the pelvis moves. All right. So this was all about identifying your neutral pelvis. Now from here, we're going to move up into your scapulothoracic region. We're moving up into your shoulder girdle. Now I'd like everybody to place their arms down by the sides. I'm going to slide down a little bit. Make sure you have enough space behind you to reach your arms overhead. Now, what I'd like you guys to do is, just flex your arms overhead and bring them back down next to your hips and do these a couple of times. Now, as you do these movements, you may feel the arch in your lower back increase. As you bring the arms back down, you'll feel that you've kind of gone back to where you were before. Now, as you reach your arms overhead, you'll note that that arch increases not because your pelvis is going into an anterior tilt. The arch is actually increasing because your ribs are starting to pop off the floor. And of course, the reason that happens is because, overhead flexion requires some thoracic extension and requires a bit of a lift through your sternum. So this exercise is about teaching the body how to isolate the movement in the shoulder girdle and not involve the thoracic spine as much. So everybody's going to inhale to reach the arms up to the ceiling and take them as far back as you can without lifting the ribs off the floor. And you're going to exhale. Use this part of your arm where the triceps are to pull your arms back down. Inhale, arms go up and back. And exhale, arms come back down. We're going to do that 3 more times. And as you can see, for me, I really can't go much further than this without popping my ribs up, and that's perfectly fine. Some people, like your dancers, the ballerinas, can go all the way back. Your patients who have hypermobility, they'll of course be able to go all the way back as well. And we're going to do just 1 more of that and back down. Now from here, we're going to go into abduction, adduction. So I'd like everybody to abduct their arms and adduct their arms. We're going to use this movement to tell or remind the body that your shoulder blades are essential in producing shoulder movements. So as you inhale, feel the scapulae rotate upwards. As you exhale, feel that inferior angle of the scapula slide back in towards the spine. We're going to do 3 more of those. 2. And you've got 1 last one. And now we're going to use the next few to train for breathing, to accentuate that lateral breathing. So you're going to inhale, feel your ribs expand out to the sides. As you exhale, feel your ribs narrow up, waist narrows up, arms draw back down. You've got 3 more. And exhale. 2. And exhale. 1 more. And exhale. Now we're going to combine all of these movements. So we're going into arm circles. Inhale, arms go up, making sure your ribs stay on the floor. Exhale, arms go wide and back in. We're going to do 3 more of these. Exhale in, 2, and last one. And in reverse, inhale out and exhale down. 3 more. And down. 2. Remember, your trunk does not move and your pelvis stays in neutral. And we're going to do 1 last one and back down. Now from here, we're going to go into the brain gym part of it. This really is my favorite part of this exercise. Okay, so left arm goes up to the ceiling, right arm goes out to the side. We're going to inhale to stay, exhale, sweep your hands into your hips and switch. So right arm goes up, left arm goes out, and exhale down, inhale to switch. And you're going to keep switching. The interesting thing about this movement is, what do you feel under your ribs? Do you feel like your weight is shifting from one side to the other? Do you feel that your weight is shifting from one side of your pelvis to the other side. And this is exactly what your body does when it's walking. All right. So we're using this to train reciprocal arm movements during gait. So this movement really is very important when it comes to gait training. All right. We're going to do one more on either side to balance yourself out and come back down. Now, from here, we're going into an exercise called femur arcs. All right. Now, I'm going to get everybody to grab a pillow for this one. All right. I'll show you why. Now, this exercise demonstrates the effects of load on the spine. Okay. Now, femur arcs is basically where you've got your leg up like this and you're doing this dissociated movement through the hip, which means that your pelvis does not move, but your femur moves. So if you were to take a microscopic view of this, what's happening is there's no acetabular movement, but there is a movement in the femoral head. All right. And this again is all about your lumbopelvic stability. If you think about it, this is you using your lateral system to stabilize. This is you using your anterior oblique sling and posterior oblique sling to stabilize. Now, some people may feel a lot of tension in the neck when they start doing this movement. And that's just because their body does not understand hip hip pelvis dissociation and lumbopelvic dissociation. So what they end up doing is, as soon as their leg lifts up, they end up going into an anterior tilt. And in an effort to stabilize, they'll push their thoracic spine down, causing this to happen in the neck. Your shoulders will round up. Not good. And that's where the pillow comes in. Props are very important. You have to you need to use whatever you can use to optimize the patient's alignment, optimize the patient's posture for the exercise that they're about to embark on. This is where your motor control 101 comes in. This is where we're talking about getting the patient from being unconsciously unaware to being consciously aware of what their coping mechanisms need to be. Now, from here, if everybody's set up, we're all going to use the inhale to float the leg up into a tabletop position. That's where your hip is in 90 degrees and your knee is in 90 degrees as well. Okay, now from here, you're going to inhale. Use the back of your thigh to sweep the thigh down. So the movement is just in your hip. You're going from 90 degrees of hip flexion towards 150 and back up. Now you go as far as you can without losing your neutral pelvis, which means that you shouldn't feel the lower back arch. If anybody's still not able to maintain this or control their lumbopelvic spine, that's where we talk about the concept of a supported neutral. So you take a towel, roll it up, put it under your lumbar spine, right at the peak of your lordosis, and that's going to tell the body, hey, look, you have support. You don't need to do this to move your leg. We're going to do 3 more on this one side. Again, as you can see, this is a really important part of your gait training. You've got 1 more. And when you're done with that last one, put the leg down, switch sides, and we're doing 5 on the other side. See if you feel a difference between the two sides. Do you feel like your opposite shoulder is starting to lift up? That's your anterior oblique spine, anterior oblique sling being biased to help out with the stability. And we're going to do 2 more of those. 1 more. And if you guys think you're ready to progress from here, we're going to go into the intermediate level. All right, where you have both legs up in tabletop and you're doing alternate leg movements. Now, of course, this is a little bit more challenging, but this also gets a bit more functional. And this progression that I just demonstrated, that's about going from a non-functional environment or non-functional orientation into a functional orientation. All right, and that you have, that's your femur arcs. This is what trains lumbo-pelvic stability with movements of the leg. All right. It also teaches your body how to dissociate the femur from the pelvis itself to help you maintain that lumbo-pelvic stability. From the femur arcs, we're going to move on to our next exercise called adductor squeeze. Now, adductor squeeze is about challenging your lumbopelvic stability in your sagittal plane. All right. So from here, you're going to inhale to abduct your knees. Go as far as you can without losing your neutral pelvis. Exhale, use your adductors, your inner thigh muscles, to draw your knees back in. Inhale, ribs expand, knees drop out. As you exhale, narrow your ribs, narrow your waist, use your inner thighs to pull the knees back in. We're going to do 3 more of these. Now, this exercise is where you might start becoming a little bit more acutely aware of your lower core muscles. All right, we're going to do 2 more and 1 more. And let's challenge our lumbopelvic stability with unilateral movements. Take your right knee out as far as you can. Now you want to let this leg go out without losing your neutral pelvis. So you don't want your left ASIs to lift up. You don't want your pelvis to tilt. You're just using the leg to drop. You're just dropping the right leg out. And you're also going to start using the left leg to help you with the stability. All right. So as we're doing this exercise, I'd like you all to try and feel, what are you using in your left leg? What are you using in your upper extremities to help you with the lumbopelvic stability? When you're done with that one side, switch to the other side. And as you do the movement here, see if pushing the non-moving leg down into the floor helps with your lumbopelvic stability. And if it does, what are you using to stabilize? As you push your left foot down, also think about pushing your, as you push your right foot down, also think about pushing your right hand down. And as you do that, see if that helps you with the stability a teeny tiny bit more. And if it does, what are you using? We're going to do just 1 more and back into the center. So this was an exercise called adductor squeeze, and this is also what we use for pelvic girdle training. Now, from here, we're moving into a bridge. The Pilates bridge is a little different from the yoga bridge. So I'd like everybody, or at least those of you who have a pillow under their head, please move the pillow out from under your head, because this is technically an inversion and you wouldn't want your cervical spine to be in a flexion as you're inverting. All right, so this is a little bit of a safety thing that one needs to highlight, okay? Now, from here, arms are down by your sides next to your hips. You're going to inhale into the sides of your ribs. As you exhale, curl the tailbone up. Feel your lower back push down into the floor, and you're going to stop there for a second. I'd like everybody to just keep curling and curl as much as you can. And you'll get to the point where you feel like the front of your thighs are starting to fire up. When you think that you can't curl anymore, that's when you'll actually start peeling the spine off the floor, maintaining that posterior tilt in the pelvis. Roll up, higher, reach the tailbone all the way up to the ceiling. Feel how the front of your hips are really nice and open. You're going to inhale to stay and exhale, melt your chest down. Melt your ribs down. Lower back comes down. Belt of the pants come down. And then finally, your tailbone comes down. And this is your controlled movement, your eccentric return. So while we're doing this, we're going to do 3 more of these. I'd like you guys to start thinking about co-contractions. Start thinking about eccentric work. Start thinking about concentric work, and start thinking about the effect such movements or such physiological responses could have in somebody who's got a dysfunctional SIJ, or a woman who had maybe a diastasis rectus, or a pubic symphysis dysfunction during her pregnancy, how could such movements help her with her rehab? Okay, so you're going to inhale into the sides of your ribs again and exhale, curl. When you feel like you can't curl anymore, that's when you're going to reach your knees over your feet to lift the pubic bone all the way up to the ceiling. Inhale to stay, exhale, melt chest, ribs, lower back, belt of the pants, and finally your tailbone back down. We're going to do 2 more of these. Inhale to prepare, exhale, curl the tailbone. Up we go. Inhale into your ribs and into your lower back to stay, and exhale back down. We're going to do this one more time. And while we're doing this, I'd like you guys to also now start thinking about the central tendon of the diaphragm, its insertion point, and what happens to the diaphragm and the central tendon on the return. And why is the exhale important on the return? Okay, we're going to do this one more time. Inhale into the sides of your ribs. As you exhale, curl. Inhale to stay, and exhale, roll back down, one segment at a time. And that was your Pilates bridge. The Pilates bridge can be used to train the pelvic girdle. It can be used as a spinal mobility exercise. It can actually even be used as a scapular stability exercise. And of course, it definitely is an inner unit exercise. So from the bridge, now that we've trained the lower body how to move into a flexion, we're going to move into an exercise called the chest lift. Okay, now the chest lift is really important because this is where a lot of people tend to, grip through the neck. The chest lift is basically your crunch. I don't like the use of the word crunch because it implies this kind of thing, which just isn't great for the neck, right? So a chest lift is a controlled flexion with the focus on the upper core. That means the core muscles and the upper end of its accessories, without too much emphasis on the neck. For this exercise, I'd like everybody to move up to the top of their mat. So you should have about this much of space left, okay? Everybody, please grab the tips of your mat, okay? And from here, I'd like you all to breathe in, lift the mat up to lift the head up. So your neck flexor should not be firing at all. As you exhale, think about sliding the sternum down towards your belly button without losing your neutral pelvis, which means that we don't want the pelvis to curl up like that. You're going to inhale into the posterior part of your upper back. As you exhale, slowly lower yourself back down. Think about how it's T7, T6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, C7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, we're going to do 2 more of these. And I'd like you to count through the vertebrae, right down to T5 or T7, whatever feels right to you. Count through those to tell your body that it needs to move through each one of these segments sequentially. This is how you end up getting into your local stabilizers, the teeny tiny stabilizers that run between the transverse processes and the spinous processes of your spine, of the vertebrae. So you're going to inhale to lift your head up, exhale, slide the chest and ribs down towards the belly button. Inhale to stay, and exhale, roll back down, one segment at a time. And come back to your starting position where the roof of your mouth is perpendicular to the floor. You've got one more. Inhale, chin to chest. Exhale. Stay there. Drop the mat. Reach your arms out in front of you. And exhale, roll back down. Arms go up to the ceiling. Now, I'd like you guys to do 3 more of those chest lifts this time without using the mat. So I want you to imagine that you are using the mat. If you remember when you were lifting, you're actually engaging all of these muscles here to help you with that flexion. So I'd like you to reach your palms, your fingers up to the ceiling, palms face forward. Now I want you to imagine that you're pushing your hands into a TheraBand. TheraBand is tied onto something behind you. So push your hands into that TheraBand and use that push to lift the head up, followed by the chest and the ribs. You're going to inhale to stay and exhale, roll back down. On the return, you want to make sure the TheraBand doesn't just snap your hands back. So it's a controlled return. You've got two more. Inhale to prepare, exhale up. Inhale to stay and exhale, go back down. We're going to do this one last time. Inhale head, exhale chest and ribs. And inhale back up. So that was your chest lift. Now the chest lift is an exercise that we would use for spinal mobility and for teaching the body how to do cervical flexions and thoracic flexions with lumbopelvic stability. Now, from here, we're going to go into an exercise called the dead bugs. And dead bugs is actually an integration exercise. All right. It's all about moving the arms and the legs reciprocally with lumbopelvic stability. Okay. So now again, for this one, if you need to, put the pillow under your head. You're going to lift both the legs up into tabletop. Now, if this is challenging for anybody, please just lift one leg up. Okay? So I'm going to show everybody the actual version first. Arms are up to the ceiling as well. Now from here, right leg swings down while the left arm reaches back and return. Then you switch sides and return. And let's go again. And return. Then you have your left leg, right arm, and return. We're just going to do two more of these on either side. Make sure your legs only go down as far as you can take them without losing your neutral pelvis. And you've got one more. And back up. Now from here, arms come back down to your side. Stretch your legs out long. Now I'd like everybody to flex your feet so you can actually access your hamstrings. Therefore, you access your dorsal longitudinal system. This exercise is called the roll-up. Arms reach out overhead. Sorry. Take the arms as far as you can without popping the ribs up. From here, you're going to inhale to lift your head and chest up. Exhale, dive all the way over. Reach over, reach your arms parallel to the floor. Now, the reason why your feet are flexed, like I said, is you want to access the dorsal longitudinal system. So over here, your upswing happened with the dorsal longitudinal system kind of pushing you up. All right. Your return is eccentric work in that system. So from here, inhale into your lower back. As you exhale, curl the tailbone forward. It's like you're doing a posterior pelvic tilt and layer yourself back down one segment at a time. Lower back, ribs, shoulder blades, and finally arms. Let's do two more of those. Inhale up, exhale, dive. Inhale to stay. Exhale, curl the tailbone forward, roll back down one segment at a time. You've got one more. Inhale up, exhale, dive. Inhale to stay and exhale, curl the tailbone forward. Slowly roll back down one segment at a time. Now, from here, I'm going to speed up a teeny tiny bit because I just realized we're running out of time and I would like to have that little question and answer session at the end. So what we saw over here, these are all examples of movements that you can do to activate your inner unit for spinal mobility as well as for the pelvic girdle. Now from here, I'd like to move into more stuff that focuses on the shoulder girdle. All right, so we're going to come up into all fours. Now, all fours, or your quadruped position, is exactly like when you're lying on your back. So if you imagine that you have the yoga block, you have a foam roller or the yoga mat along your back, it should be in a straight line. Okay, that means your pelvis still needs to be neutral in this position. All right, it means your pelvis can't curl down too much, nor should it reach up to the ceiling too much. So let's do a couple of things to figure out what your neutral pelvis is over here. So I'd like everybody to curl the tailbone down and lift the tailbone up. We're going to do this a couple of times more. And as you do this movement, allow the movement to trickle through your whole spine so you're in your camel and up into your cat. And exhale into the camel and inhale up into the cat. We're going to do this 2 times more. Always initiate the movement through the tailbone. And you've got 1 more. And back up into your cat. And from here, come into a neutral position, a position where your tailbone's not curling down nor reaching up too much, right in the center. Now, from here, we need to figure out what your neutral scapular position is. So I'd like everybody to retract their shoulder blades, which means that you're going to slide your chest plate down to the floor. Now, as you can see, when I do this, I still don't lose my neutral pelvis. So I'm not doing this, yeah? You want to maintain your neutral pelvis as you slide the chest plate down, allowing your shoulder blades to retract. Push your hands into the floor. Slide the chest plates away from your spine into a protraction. We're going to do this a couple of times more. And as you do this, feel for the thoracic extension and thoracic flexion that this movement cues. 2 more. 1 more. And I'd like you all to come into your neutral scapular position. If you still have the pillow on the mat, move the pillow out of the way. Maintain that neutral scapular position. I'd like you all to reach your left arm out. When you reach your left arm out, it shouldn't feel like your pelvis is tilting to the left. It definitely shouldn't feel like you're sinking into your right shoulder either. And switch. And as you do this movement, again, you will actually feel a weight shift between your knees. And this is exactly what happens when we're walking, right? It's your opposite arm and leg movement. So again, this is a fantastic little thing to train for gait. From here, we're adding in the legs. Now, I want everybody to imagine that you've got a coffee cup sitting on your sacrum. You don't want to spill any of that coffee. So as you inhale, I'd like everybody to slide their foot out and tuck their toes under. As you exhale, swing that knee back under you. Inhale, slide the right foot out, tuck your toes under, and exhale back under. We're just going to keep doing this. And as you do this, make sure you don't lose that coffee cup. Make sure you don't lose that neutral pelvis. And we're just going to do 1 more on either side. And back there. And come back onto all fours. We're going to end off with an exercise called thread a needle. All right, we're going to end off this position with an exercise called thread a needle. So I'd like everybody to reach their right hand under their left arm. Rotate your trunk towards your left as you bring yourself down onto the floor. From here, push yourself up. Rotate your chest up to the right. Reach your arm up to the ceiling and dive back down again and up. Now again, when you're doing all of this, your feet need to stay flat on the floor, and you also want to make sure that your pelvis does not move. Switch sides and up, down and up. Let's do that 1 more time and up. All right. And from here, we're going to head back down onto the mat. So what I'd like everybody to do, walk your knees back a little bit, swing yourself forward. So again, this is exactly like your femur arcs, right? You're thinking of doing that hip pelvis dissociation where the acetabulum does not move, but the femur moves into an extension, right? And from here, you're going to bend your elbows, making sure you don't sink into your shoulder blades. Bend your elbows, bring yourself down, pubic bone, ribs, chest, and finally your head. Now from here, we're going to move into spinal extensions. All right. So again, make sure you have enough space in front of you. I unfortunately don't have enough space, so I'm going to bend my knees, but I'd like everybody to keep their legs straight. Okay. Now, core activation in prone is a challenge for a lot of people. All right. So we need to take a little bit of time with this one. I'd like everybody to interlace, to put your hands one over the other and rest your forehead on your hands. Okay. And from here, everybody inhale into the sides of the ribs and into the posterior aspect of your ribs. As you exhale, narrow your ribs and pick your belly button off the floor without changing the spine. Those of you who are a little lordosed or have a hypolordosis, as you exhale to lift the belly button up, please also reach your tailbone down towards your heel. That will help you with your core activation because this is what we refer to as neutral pelvis in prone. Okay? Now, maintaining that, slide your arms out by the side and I'd like your hands on the floor, palms facing one another. Forehead stays on the floor as well. Now, cervical extensions is another thing that throws people off. They don't quite understand how exactly the neck is supposed to move into an extension. So I'd like you all to imagine that there's a marble under your nose. I'd like you all to also remember that your nose, chin, and sternum are all connected to one another by a string. As you breathe in, nudge that marble forward so your nose, chin, chest lift up. And as those lift up, you'll feel your arms slide in towards you to lift the chest up even further. And exhale, slide your arms back down to return one segment at a time. Inhale up again. And exhale down. We're going to do this one more time. Inhale up. And exhale down. Now let's take this a little bit further. This exercise was called the mini swan. From here, I'd like us to do the actual swan. Okay, so in the actual swan, the movement technique is exactly the same. It's just that your elbows reach towards your heels. Now the swan is what we call the cobra in yoga. Yeah, yeah. All right, so we're looking at segmental movement into extension along the whole spine. So from here, inhale to nudge the marble forward, lift your nose, chin, chest up, reach your elbows towards your heels to push yourself all the way up. Eyes are straight out in front of you, so it feels like your head is balanced on top of your shoulders. Inhale to stay. Exhale, bend your elbows. Make sure you maintain the neutral shoulder blades. Shoulders stay away from your ears. Roll back down one segment at a time. Elbows back up to the ceiling. You've got two more. Nose, chin, chest, elbows up. Inhale to stay. And exhale, elbows, scapula away from your ears. Roll back down. We're going to do that one more time. Remember to keep the belly button off the floor as much as you can. Inhale, nose, chin, chest, elbows. Exhale up. Inhale to stay and exhale back down. One segment at a time. Now from here, I'd like everybody to push themselves back into their child's pose. We're gonna do our last exercise for the day. And let's get you all to sit up tall. Now, the other part of integration, if you remember from the slide, was about moving from a non-functional environment into a functional environment. Functional would be your dependent environment, your dependent position, which means kneeling, sitting, half standing, standing. So these are all functional. So you should ideally make sure that your last couple of exercises deal with being upright, because kinesthetically, unfortunately, a lot of us just don't know where we are in space, and therefore we're not equipped with the tools to figure out what our optimal alignment should be for the activity that we're about to perform. And therefore, being upright is really important as you're ready to leave the session. This is an exercise called the mermaid. I'd like everybody to get into this W sit. So mirror me if you can. Okay. If this is challenging because internal rotation is restricted, external rotation is restricted, knees feel a little uncomfortable because the hips are not moving optimally, you are welcome to sit cross-legged as well. If this is still not comfortable for your back or your knees, prop yourself up onto your cushion. All right. I'm going to get into W sitting because this is, I just love to sit in this position. Probably has something to do with that. I have a scoliosis in my back. So this is really good for me because of that. Now from here, reach your arms out wide, and I'd like everybody to use that inhale to sit up tall. Imagine that you're in a parachute harness. This parachute is open overhead, and that, it's just pulling you straight up. Equal weight left and right. Arms are out to the sides. We're going to inhale, side flex. Now the side flexion is all about your trunk. This arm of mine is actually quite free. I can go quite low, all right, without putting too much weight on this hand. So if I lift the hand up, I can still stay here because these guys are doing all the eccentric control part. Exhale, slide your left shoulder blade down to your ribs, ribs down to your hips to bring yourself back up. We're going to do 2 more of those. And exhale. Now this is where that inhale becomes really important again, because we're focusing on expanding just one lung. Inhale into your left lung. Feel your left ribs reach up to the ceiling as you go into a right side bend. And exhale, draw those ribs together, close up the fan of the ribs to bring yourself back upright. Now from here, switch sides. Arms are out by your side. And let's go over. And exhale back up. You've got 2 more. And exhale back up. Last one. And exhale back up. And there you go. There, that was your teeny tiny little Pilates class. All of this stuff that we did here is what we refer to as pre-Pilates exercises. We went through about 2/3 of the program that I had drawn out for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. This is the next slide, which was on the integration exercises. So here we did your dead bugs, okay? And I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present to you guys. And I hope that this has given you a little bit more knowledge on what Pilates is all about and what it can do for you and for your patients.
Thank you so much, Aparna, for the wonderful session. So it was a so
Oh.
great presentation. It was so melodious. The instructions were so melodious.
I'm glad you all enjoyed it. Because the thing is, I can't see you, but I'm glad you were all able to follow it. I'm very happy to hear that.
I don't know, for unknown reasons, I'm not able to see any attendees. But the other controller is able to see at least 40, on an average 40 participants are there.
That's excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. My phone's been off the hook, so people have been messaging it.
Yeah, now it is open for question answer session. I request the participants to pose questions because I'm not able to view the chat box or the questions there. So can you please unmute yourself, introduce, and then please ask question. Dear participants, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and you can ask question.
Well, I hope there are no questions because everything was clear.
No, I think there is some technical issue
Uh-huh.
because otherwise definitely there will be some questions coming up.
Okay.
Because as I told, I could not see the attendees, but already we have started with the session. But I got messages that they are able to see you.
Okay, that's good. That is good.
So
I'm
we
glad
have
to
got
hear that.
our students, postgraduates, faculty
Oh,
members are there.
really?
Kavita,
Well,
Kavita has joined already.
yeah, I know. She just messaged me and she's actually they've all been sending me photos as well, which is great.
Yeah, that's what.
But
So I don't know, for unknown reason, I couldn't
yeah.
see any of the attendees here, or I don't think
Oh,
whether they will be able to ask questions.
that's okay. Well, look, you know what? I hope you guys managed to get my email address. So if you're not able to ask me questions, please feel free to email me with any questions or queries that you may have. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a course, like a full-blown rehab Pilates course that I've been working on for about a year. And I'm hoping to launch it soon. So if you guys have any questions about that, please really just feel free to email me questions about anything.
Yeah, sincere regrets, dear participants. For some technical reason, we are not able to. I don't know. Chat box is not available, or we could not see the attendees here. But I know that you are connected and you were there all throughout the session. We sincerely thank on behalf of Physiotherapy MCHP HOD and the faculty members. I sincerely thank Ms. Aparna Shah, our esteemed alumnus, for sparing her valuable time on a holiday to share her knowledge and skills with respect to the Pilates. So nice of you for you having accepted our invitation and
Of
responding to,
course.
by extending support in conducting this series.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you
Yeah,
guys had a good session and take care. Stay safe
yeah.
and
Just a
hope.
moment.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, Nivedita. Yeah. Yeah. Just a minute. Just a minute.
Sure.
Can you just speak now?
Sure. What would you like me to say?
Yeah, Aparna, can you hear this? Yeah, please go ahead.
Uh,
It was a very nice session. Are you able to hear me?
it's very faint. So if Salvam can hear you, maybe he can just say the same
Yeah,
thing. Maybe he can just repeat the question.
I can pose the question. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, 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 okay. Yeah, you can just stay online. I'll just on behalf of Miss Nivedita, I'm just asking this question. In case of SI joint dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
so in case of rehabilitation, so what kind of you were mentioning something on imprint. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
how to, what specific exercise can be done in case of SI joint dysfunction?
Okay. See, so the thing is that, there's a lot of discrepancy on the definition of the term imprint. All right. Imprint in the traditional definition, what the imprint is actually meant to be is that you're able to get your lumbar spine all the way down to the floor without doing a posterior tilt. All right, which means that your pelvis stays in neutral, but your lumbar spine is kind of flattened down onto the floor. Now, if you're doing exercises in that position, it's all good. However, if you end up adopting the current definition or what people believe imprint is all about, if you end up doing the posterior tilt of the pelvis and you do all your exercise, this is going to actually end up straining your SIJ even further. All right. If you look at the anatomy of the sacrum, relative to everything else, you need a certain level of mutation to get the keystone effect that holds your pelvis together with the sacrum sitting right in the middle. So if you do this posterior tilt, that's really not good for your SIJ. And that's the reason why you see a lot of people who have a sway back or a flat back develop an SIJ dysfunction. So honestly, based on my experience and all the work that I've done, I find that it's really important to open up the thoracic spine first when you start doing your rehab for somebody who has an SIJ dysfunction. Because as you saw through a lot of these movements, once you open up your thoracic spine, automatically everything just relaxes into the optimal position. And then from here, you can do whatever you want. If your patient is not able to maintain this optimal, even after opening up the thoracic spine, that's where it becomes really important to get into a supported neutral. So you take a towel, roll it up, place it under the lower back. All right. So that helps your body to maintain a neutral pelvis and a relatively stable spine while you do all your movements. Okay. Now, as far as your specific question was, what exercises would work for somebody who has an SIJ dysfunction? Unfortunately, I can't answer that because to answer that, I need to know what caused the SIJ dysfunction in the first place. Is it just them not being able to use their slings for lumbopelvic stability? If that's the case, then why can they not use their slings? Has something happened in the past? Is there a scoliosis? Is there a limb length discrepancy? Was there a pregnancy? Was there a fall? There are a lot of questions to be answered. So, yeah, I hope that helps a little bit with your question.
Thank you, Aparna. So it was a detailed response. Unfortunately, as I told, there are participants who are very much interested, and they have stayed out and they have been asking questions. They are sending me the message that they are not able to see chat box or.
Oh dear.
So
Well, you know
it's
what?
quite unusual.
Sorry, yes, carry on.
Yeah, that's what. There is some technical issue because of
Okay.
which we could not see the chat box or the audience.
That's okay. But you
We'll
know what? Let
we'll
me
rectify this. So this is the first time we are hosting in a Microsoft Teams platform.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's okay. Let me read out my email address to you. So if anybody has questions, you can email me at this address. I'll spell it out for you. It's SHAPARNAH@yahoo.com. So to repeat, that's Singapore, Hong Kong, America, Portugal, America, Russia, Norway, America, Hong Kong @yahoo.com.
Yeah. I'm just. Can you unshare your screen?
Oh yes, of course. Sorry. There you go. Unshared.
Yeah. I'm just showing up the email ID.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see this?
No, unfortunately, I can't. Yes, yes, now I can see it. Thank you. That's a great idea, Mr. Salvam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for supporting us in conducting this webinar session.
Of
I
course,
once again thank on behalf of HOD and the entire team of faculty members for having connected with your alma mater after a long time and
after a
share
long time. Yes.
after a long
No,
time. Yeah,
so,
I think
no, but seriously,
shortly
thank you.
completing 2 decades.
No, thank you so much for having me on board. I mean, my time in Manipal was very precious to me, and because it really helped to shape me in every way. So I really was looking forward to coming on and doing this for you and touching base with everybody. So thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, there have been many learning points during this presentation. Besides the core knowledge, what you have shared, as well as
Mm.
the demonstrations, the technique of instruction, it
Yes,
was really gracious. So you have had the master stroke of
thank
giving
you.
instructions, and it is
Thank
a
you.
good learning point for our postgraduates as well. So when
Mm.
they instruct the patients, so what
Yes,
should be how should be the verbal feedback, how should be
yes.
the instructions given to them. So there are a lot of implicit learning other than the core knowledge
Knowledge
what
itself.
you said.
Yes,
We
yes.
really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you once
Thank you
again.
for having me on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care,
Okay.
everybody. Stay safe.
Yeah. We'll again get connected again in some other
Yes,
session.
for sure. Yes, for sure. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.